see them tumbling down, pledging their love to the ground.
An old cowpoke went riding out one dark and windy day. Upon a ridge he rested.
Hi, welcome to the Sons of the Pioneers History Channel. I'm Paul Elliott. I play fiddle for the Sons of the Pioneers. And today I'm going to talk a little bit about another classic Western song and tell you a little bit about the man who wrote it and how he came to write it. The odds are good that you've heard this song many, many times. It's actually been recorded under several different names. The title was originally registered as Riders in the Sky, but it's also been recorded under the name Ghost Riders in the Sky, and A Cowboy Legend. From the time it was written in 1948 by a man named Stan Jones, it's probably been recorded by a more diverse collection of artists than any other song in the genre. And it's left an indelible mark on Western music and on American popular culture. So, who was this guy, Stan Jones, and how did he come to write this song? Stan Jones was born in southeastern Arizona in the town of Douglas in 1914, and he grew up surrounded by cattle ranches, cowboys, and the beauty of the desert. From an early age, Stan loved learning and adventure, and eventually those loves took him all over the West, first to study zoology at the University of California, Berkeley, later to work in the big copper mine in Jerome, Arizona, and then on to the Pacific Northwest, where he drove a snowplow, worked as a logger, and ate smoke as a firefighter in the forests. During World War II, Stan was a field director for the American Red Cross in Bend, Oregon. This diverse background made Stan a very interesting and broad-minded person. Lloyd Perryman, a longtime member of the Sons of the Pioneers and a close friend of Stan's, said, "There's no subject you could find that Stan Jones wouldn't have a great knowledge of." Here's Lloyd telling Ken Griffiths about that in a 1974 interview.
This is just a little anecdote. My wife and I thought there was a possibility that maybe Stan professed to know more than he actually did. Because, as I said, you couldn't mention anything biblical, historical, dates, anything that Stan didn't have a great deal of knowledge about. Well, with our lack of knowledge as to whether he was right or not, we decided that we would get the encyclopedias out and some extra books and read up about the conquistadors when they came into Mexico. And Stan was coming over. He used to come to my house, or I'd go to his at least once a week, sometimes 2 or 3 times. We'd stay up all hours of the night singing and talking about music and whatnot. Anyhow, this night, well, we got all the knowledge we could get about the conquistadors. Stan came over. We directed the conversation around 2 this time. Well, he knew all they had in his encyclopedias and all the books we got, plus a great deal more information. And it was just amazing, the man's memory. He had the most active mind that I've ever come in contact with.
Driven by his love of the outdoors, Stan joined the National Park Service. A mid-July job transfer found him working in Death Valley. His wife, Olive, had given him an old Martin guitar as a surprise present, and he found inspiration for many songs in the beauty of the desert. Over his lifetime, more than 100 of his songs were recorded, but one of them was destined to become a true classic. Although he wrote it while in Death Valley, its roots go way back to an incident in his young life. Here's Stan telling the story in his own words.
Well, the idea for Riders in the Sky came from an old Indian legend, which was first told to me when I was, about 12 years old.
Oh?
Yep. On a ranch in southern Arizona, my home. I'd been sent out to do a chore or 2 on the ranch. I saddled up a horse and took off. After I'd finished my work, it was beginning to blow up a storm, and not having my poncho along, I decided to take an old path up over the mountain, which was between me and the ranch house. I was hoping to beat the rain, of course.
Yeah?
Well, right up on top of the ridge, I met an old cowpuncher. Sort of a weird old fellow.
Well, he was just sitting there looking up into the sky, huh?
Yeah, and was I scared.
Oh, I would have been myself.
So, when I got to him, without even turning his head to look at me, he said, "Son, look up into the sky, and you'll see the red-eyed cows of the devil's herd." And I looked. And with the peculiar cloud formation, which was being rimmed by heat lightning, I saw that devil's herd.
And what happened then, Stan?
You never saw a horse or a boy get on off a mountain as fast in your life. Believe me, I've never forgotten the story.
Well, then was when you wrote the song, huh?
No, it was when I was stationed with the park rangers in Death Valley. It was on my birthday, and I happened to look up into the sky, and, well, sir, I saw that same kind of a cloud formation as I had way back the other time. And it sort of all came back to me. And I went inside and wrote the song.
By the way, that drifter was an old cowboy named Cap Watts, a friend of the Jones family. And although Stan told several versions of that story over the years, this account he gave to Lloyd Perryman here is probably the closest to the truth. Eventually, the Park Service made Stan its representative to Hollywood film crews when they came to Death Valley to film. After a long, hot day of filming, cast and crew members often sat around and listened to Stan's songs and stories. Impressed by what they heard, they encouraged him to get a publisher in Los Angeles. Here's Lloyd Perryman again.
So Stan finally became convinced, and he was a large fan of the Sons of the Pioneers. So the first person he started to look for was Bob Nolan, because he respected Bob's songs and he respected his work. So he went to Bob Nolan's house, and he found out where he lived and went out there, and evidently he must have shown Bob a lot of songs, among which was Ghost Riders in the Sky.
The Sons of the Pioneers wound up being the first group to record that song in late 1948, but that version wasn't released immediately. Burl Ives had the first commercially released recording of it on Columbia Records in February of 1949, followed almost immediately by a version from Vaughn Monroe and his orchestra a month later. The song showed its hit potential immediately. Ives' version spent 6 weeks on the Billboard charts and reached number 21. Monroe's version hit number 1 and stayed on the charts for 22 weeks, with Billboard ranking it as the number 1 song of 1949. Since then, it's been recorded by many people, including the Sons of the Pioneers, Peggy Lee, Bing Crosby, Frankie Lane, Johnny Cash, the Ramrods, and the Blues Brothers, to name just a few. Eventually, the Western Writers of America chose it as the greatest Western song of all time. So there it is, an impressionable 12-year-old boy who went on to become a park ranger and a songwriter, a storm, and a drifter with a tale to tell, all merged together one day in Death Valley to create one of the most powerful and haunting songs in Western music. I hope you've enjoyed this video on the Sons of the Pioneers History Channel. If you did, be sure to give it a like and hit that subscribe button so you'll be the first one to know when we release more like it. Thanks. I'm Paul Elliott. Hope to see you again out on the trail real soon.
An old cowpoke went riding out one dark and windy day. Upon a ridge he rested as he went along his way. When all at once a mighty herd of red-eyed cows he saw, plowing through the ragged sky.